Hello, my friends. I hope you had a fantastic week. This week, I'm back with a brand new interview with Tracy. Tracy specializes in helping you create healthier relationships professionally and personally. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Enjoy the interview. It's incredible, great fun. Now, I'm going to hand over to Past Me to introduce Tracy and continue this interview. Thank you so much for coming back, and I'll see you in just a moment.
Hi, Carlton. Welcome me. Thanks for the invitation. And my name is Tracy Kimberg. I'm a relationship expert. I have a private practice. I live in Dorset. I've been self-employed for, gosh, how many years? Probably about 25 years. That's quite long. I'm giving my age away. I have a passion for relationships, a passion to, and I should add healthy relationships, an advocate to help people have healthy relationships, not only personally, but in the business world as
Fantastic.
well.
And thank you so much for the time, Tracy, because I think, relationships as a whole is not something that we can be in business, we can be in our lives really, and not navigate, right? Like we can't, there's no way to have, even the relationship we have with ourselves, right? It's still a relationship. And, in our
Exactly.
pre-show conversation, we were talking a lot about kind of how relationships also change. And it's kind of where I want to start because I think we're in a interesting economic time at the moment. We're in an interesting reality where there's a lot of people making a lot of decisions, whether that's how they spend their time, how they spend their money, how they spend their resources, how they spend their energy. But for me, it does align and it does really, I guess, in some ways, choose who you actually have in your life as well is actually arguably one of those important decisions you should be making as well, because as things get slightly more challenging or slightly more interesting, what we're trying to avoid, I suppose, is the people who are going to drag you down, the people who are not going to be able to support your growth, the people who are not going to be able to push or facilitate that vision which drives you and helps you become in that purpose,
Exactly.
right? Have you, either in your professional side or personal side, etc., noticed there has been a shift towards people's, I guess, adaptation or change in since the kind of economy's got a bit more, we're not in fluffy cloud land anymore. It's not like
Let's call it
it,
unstable,
I,
isn't it?
I don't like using the word
I
unstable
think,
because it kind of implies that you don't have control over it. You do, but I think we have to make some quite interesting and difficult decisions, as I say, with those people who we have around us.
exactly. I think it's exactly that. It's about finding control in the situation that you can't control. And yes, we don't have control over the corporate pressures of that the financial implications of globally is bringing us, but we can control a lot. And I've noticed it definitely. People are taking stock of um, a lot of things in their life, where they're spending their time, how they're spending their money, um, you know, and a lot of stuff has been going online. I mean, since COVID, we all know this. Our lives have gone so much online, but even the online aspects of things, I've noticed that people are reassessing their time, whether it's bringing them value, not only financially but personally. And yeah, I definitely picked
I
up
think
on
it's a
that.
really important point that you mentioned there, which is about value, right? Because I was having a conversation the other day with a coaching client, and we were talking about the value that one gives to the market, right? Because that's actually what clients care about in some ways. Because we can be
Mm,
priced however we're priced, but as long as the value is always going to be greater for that person paying the money than the price, they'll continue to pay the price, right? So it actually doesn't matter on
exactly.
price necessarily. It's how do we perform. And this is the reality of the fact is that where we are right now with the economy,
This is
the,
a
the only
dilemma.
people who are going to survive, if I'm being really blunt, are the ones who can perform, right?
Yes, but this is so interesting, Carlton, because this is where the ethical dilemma or the dilemma for us as business owners comes. Because, yes, that might have been the case in the past, but now because the value part of your business, yes, you might be value, but look, if you can't squeeze blood out of a stone, And if people don't have the money, how the hell are they going to pay for you? So this is where your relationship skills come in. And this is where you need to actually have the skills and the willingness to improve your relationship skills, whether it's interpersonal with yourself, in a corporate setting, so that you can be trusted on a deeper level than just because of your value.
No, I really agree with that. I mean, I know what we talked about as well was the concept, and I think it's actually really important and something that specifically men, from my point of view, don't do enough work on passively, I would say. That is the relationship they have with their own authentic self or themselves. Because I think sometimes, especially as leaders or especially as people who are looked up to, we can, I mean, we were alluding to the concept of stoicism, and I know you don't like the word stoicism, but I'll use it because it's the best articulation of what I mean, which,
People understand what it is,
yeah,
isn't
which
it?
is, and for those who may not be familiar, the concept of stoicism is the ability to be able to act in a way regardless of your feelings, right? It's the concept of duty, it's the concept of honor, it's the concept, etc. As a man, and from a societal norm point of view, men are meant to be this way. Now, I asterisk it always by saying, in the correct context, yes, you should be stoic, right? But the same man, and this is where some people disagree with me, the same man should have relationships, people in their life, where he can be completely vulnerable and open and not stoic, and be able to process his feelings and be able to process what he needs to heal and be able to process the ability. But I think, and you alluded to it in our pre-conversation, that's why I want to mention it here, if someone isn't actually able to have that place, that environment, that person, those people, that circle, and this could be a man or a woman that they go to, that person who they can be purely vulnerable with without judgment. That could be a coach, that could be a partner, that could be a parent, it could be 1,000 different people. It's going to be different per person. But the important element for me is actually the ability to have that, because what can be the caveat, what can be the issue, what can be the concern, I guess in some ways from a professional leadership point of view, but also just for the person as well, for that man who is being told for their entire life, you need to be stoic.
Yes. I think this is a very, very important topic, because I see the results of people that are trying to be stoic and not showing up as their authentic selves. And like I said earlier to you, they get up in the morning, get in their car, whether it's a Ford Focus or a BMW, but when they walk into the office, they have to be this persona. And you can try and do that for as long as you can, but eventually it will catch up with you. And how do you expect the people around you to trust and be vulnerable with you in a setting of a corporate business, for instance, when you can't be that for them? And we all have this skill of vulnerability, this amazing magic that happens when we are vulnerable. And this is how relationships are built. And if you are able to take your mask off when you go to work and say, look, I want you to respect me, and this is why. I'm not going to pretend to be this person that I'm not. And at a work function at the end of the year, then you think, who the hell's that? That's actually my boss. Can you believe it? He's a complete different person. I'd rather be the boss that people say, you know what, my boss is the most real person I've ever had. And that means a lot to people. And then they trust you. And there's research that shows that the people that show up authentically in relationships, specifically in business, have a very low staff turnover. Why? It's because people feel safe. People feel that they can be vulnerable. And they feel that the place at work is real. It's not fake. And that's the thing.
Which I've discussed with many people, but I think it's one of the conversations that I have that's really important, because I think in a societal norm there needs to be a level of agreeability within reason, right? Because the unfortunate reality, if there wasn't, it would be a very nasty, very mean, very unpleasant place to operate in, right? However, my personal view is one needs to be cautious and one needs to be aware where the line is when you're being agreeable and you're playing the game and you're not being your authentic self or you're not being honest, right? Because my opinion of someone should still be able to come through, right? And I think, again, it's the context and etc. But I think, and the reason why I bring it up here is it's very important to understand who your tribe, who your people are, right? Because if you can't be vulnerable or you can't share your actual opinions, and that's, combative, or potentially when you are that way and you say, look, this is how my perception, it's only your perception, of course it's only your perception, but this is my perception of you. If their reality or their response is of aggression or of combativeness or etc., then they're clearly not getting the point of why you're sharing it or why you're trying to be vulnerable or trying to articulate it. And
I think, yeah, and I think it's important here that you can't address that side of things without addressing the fact that we all have a responsibility, and part of the message is in the delivery. Part of the, you have to take responsibility for how the person responds to what you're delivering in any relationship. And are you delivering it in the best way you possibly can? That saying where people say, I'm going to be brutally honest. I hate that saying, because honesty does not mean brutal. Honesty means emotionally intelligently honest. And emotional intelligence is understanding how someone's behavior is affecting you and being aware of how your behavior is affecting them. If you are having a good conversation and you notice someone's being triggered, whether it's in a personal relationship or at work, you can't say to yourself in your head, well, I'm being my authentic self here. You have to also look at the situation from their point of view and say, right, what am I saying that's triggering this person? And be inquisitive. Having good relationships is about being inquisitive and showing the person that actually, I see you being triggered. What is it that's triggering you? What is it that's upsetting you? What am I saying that's upsetting you? But also realize that in any relationship, your boundaries are what guide you. And if something's nagging at you or your intuition is saying something's not right, you have 100% the right to address that issue. But how are you going to address that issue?
And I think this is where personal responsibility within reason, but also holding others to account can be very important, because sometimes, professionally or personally, you will point out things that are slightly uncomfortable or maybe don't go down in the right way. And okay, yes, you can take responsibility, as you alluded to, of how you articulate that information. But with certain individuals, certain people, I'm sure you've had it, I've had it, where you're going to articulate a point they don't necessarily agree with, or that makes them feel uncomfortable because of their behavior or the actions they've chosen to, say, do, etc. You can be in a position where sometimes you have to be brutally honest for them to understand the point and understand the point of view that you're sharing. But then the question, I think, becomes, how do they reciprocate that? As I said, as I alluded to, are they combative? Are they, oh, that's just mean, that's just nasty? Okay, well, they're not really accepting that point of view then, because it's kind of a balance. Empathy is, from my view at least, empathy is a two-sided coin, right? If someone is empathetic towards you, then absolutely you should be empathetic towards them. But if someone isn't necessarily having the ability for whatever reason to be empathetic towards you, sometimes to get the point across, you can't necessarily always lean into empathy. You should, sure. You're not being deliberately mean or deliberately horrible, I would hope. But sometimes the brutal truth is the point you need to make for your own sake, and/or for them to hopefully gain some lessons or gain some knowledge or gain some perspective to help them move forward in their own growth. And that actually might mean, professionally, personally, in general, that you and that person's relationship ceases to exist for a period of time or forever, right? Be- and
Exactly.
that's okay, by the way, right? For the record, that's okay, right? But I think sometimes we, especially as I can speak from more a men's point of view, especially in a personal situation, we will hold on to, oh, this person, this person, this person, because maybe they are toxic or maybe they aren't good for me, but it's better than being alone in theory. And something which I've learned through time is actually no, being alone is actually better for you than, or being perceived alone, being independent, is better than being surrounded or being or inviting the wrong people into your life, right?
Yeah, I think that's true, Carlton. But for me as a therapist, I always ask, why is that? Why are you inviting people into your life that are toxic? And a lot of the time, it's because people aren't whole themselves, and they're trying to fill a hole somewhere, um, something that they are lacking as a person. They think, if I'll be happy if I meet somebody, I'll be successful if I mix with those people, then I'll be perceived as something that I wish I was. And hang on, please stop doing that, because that is the vicious cycle of self-destruction. You have to have self-confidence, self-worth, and the self-care of yourself to grow yourself enough. People can't fulfill you. You have to find your fulfillment from within. And this goes for any relationship, whether it's with your parents, with your partner, with your best friend, or at work. You need to know your value, be very aware of it, be confident in it. And by knowing your value, you can show up more authentically as who you really are, and be your true self, be vulnerable. And that's how the best relationships are built on
No,
that,
I'd really agree,
you
and I
know.
think sometimes, I mean, I've had it. I'm sure you've had clients with it, or even yourself personally. Something that I had to do this year specifically was like, okay, let's ask myself the really hard questions about why I make the decisions I make, right? The crux, for those who don't know, was because of past location based things, because I was abandoned by my father, technically, right? So I had a level of abandonment there. But that caused me to specifically choose specific people to be invited into my life that maybe weren't necessarily healthy for me, right? Now, the
Mm.
easy or the path of least resistance there is, oh, I'm just going to invite more bad people into my life. Well, not, and they're not bad people; they're bad people for me.
I'll tell you why you do that. It's because you try and relive that story and have a different ending in your life. So you invite people to, hopefully, because it feels familiar, because you know what it feels like to have the chase, call it the chase, of having a different ending. But unfortunately, it very rarely does have a different ending. And this is why you find often in relationships that people that have repetitive abusive relationships, or repetitive relationships with alcoholics, or repetitive relationships with emotionally unavailable people, it's because the initial connection feels so familiar that they think, oh, this feels good, I'm going with this person. But in actual fact, they're redoing the same story over and over again in a different outfit. And, it's about having that awareness of yourself and the things that need to change. And sometimes people don't know that they are reliving the past in the present. And this is where therapy is so helpful.
No, I really agree, and I think it's one of those things where as one grows, as one develops, we have to make a choice on whether we're going to repeatedly go over the same cycle over and over and over again, or whether we're going to ask, as I say, ask ourselves the hard questions, which is, okay, well, why, why am I, why am I doing this? Why am I making these decisions, right? But also, I
Mm.
think something that I've learned this year specifically has been the people who are good for you will be around in your life and facilitate growth in your life without sacrificing your own peace, right? From yourself, how you do it, what you do, etc. You won't have this ebb and flow of these mental health, like, oh my god, I'm on cloud nine and things are incredible, and then oh my god, I'm in the dupes and down, and etc. I think there is also a correlation. Of course, here I'm talking more personally, but there's also a correlation to when things are going really well in business, right? Because something I've been talking to a lot of coaching clients about lately has been like this concept of squishing your realities. Because traditionally when we start, we win the first client. Yes, we've won. Yes, that's great. Right? We win our biggest new job, etc. We win a new retainer. We get a new piece of kit, whatever it is, right? That everyone has a different reality that they're really high on, right? But then also when we potentially lose that, or when we're potentially in a position where things fall potentially, or things aren't going as well, or things slow down, we can also be down in the dumps. The reason why I try to squish that personally, but also then I help clients do that, is it allows you to basically continue to be consistent with the work you need to do every day. Because the reality of running a business is you have to show up whether there is paid work to do or not, because the only way you're going to get the paid work is by your output, is by continuing to be visible, is by continuing to market, by continuing to talk to people. Now, how you choose to do that, I'm sure is something we'll allude to and we'll go into, but for me, that's the important balance in that. I mean, in your experience, have you seen that it's something which people need to grow into? Is that kind of squished? You're not up in the clouds when things are going well, but you're also not down in the depths when things are not necessarily going
well. Yeah. I'm looking at my little tool that I always show people, and I'm going to actually use it now. I didn't plan this, by the way. Life is all about balance. And when I always say to people, my clients, that think of your life as a tripod. Okay. And you grow different aspects of your life. So say now you decide, right, I'm going to grow my business, and you work on it and it starts growing. But guess what happens? Your tripod's off balance. So you need to grow everything at the same time to get that balance. You have to grow your relationships. You have to grow your personal strength, your self-worth, your self-confidence to be able to stay stable. If you only focus on one aspect at a time and give all your energy to one thing, you are going to fall flat on your face at some point. So it's about recognizing continuously the balance. And you can see this as a relationship. You can see this as your marketing. You can see this as anything in life. If it's not balanced, you are going to, excuse my French, I'm going to say the word fuck up. And you can't do that. So when people come to me and they've got issues with their relationship, whether it's a business partners, guaranteed there's not balance there. And it's about identifying where is the imbalance, what are you doing wrong, and how can you change that to get that whole balance back into order. And that's how you create success in your relationships,
I really agree. And I think, I was fortunate to get some time with a friend yesterday, and we were discussing this a lot about like the good people in your life will continue to support that structure that you have, right? It's just little things like, are you exercising? Are you eating well? Do you have a pattern of sleep? Do you have a circadian rhythm that makes sense for you? That's not saying you have to be at this social norms time. No. Does it work for you? Does it mean that you can do everything you need and want to do in your day to day and in relationship to the other people you need to connect with, right? But I think that does open up a very interesting question about how one communicates, right? Because a lot of what I'm seeing, especially with the people I'm speaking to at the moment, is there's this kind of shift, I guess, in some ways, and we kind of alluded to it with the value part of this conversation, but how one communicates, how one does marketing to create this visualization presence, this ability to be visual, right? Because I think sometimes and I kind of alluded to this in a comment on a YouTube video I was watching a couple of months ago, about like we kind of go into this, oh, it was like this previously, this nostalgic mindset of I went to in-person networking and it got me business, for example, right? But the problem with that is, in the same way where you would have maybe a nostalgic memory of a friend, or a nostalgic memory of a partner, or a nostalgic memory of anything, it's nostalgic. It's not reality. It's what you remember, and you're remembering it through tinted spectacles as well. You're not remembering the reality. You're remembering what you want to remember, because we pick and choose it, right? We pick out the good bits and we go, yeah, I'll remember these because these are nice. What we don't remember is the beginning of that networking session, which was difficult and uncomfortable and challenging, right? Before we were confident enough to be able to talk to random strangers about what we do. But also, is that necessarily the most effective way? Maybe not. Maybe. Depends on the business, right? But how have you, I guess, through the pandemic, now, etc., have you changed your marketing? Have you changed your approach? Have you changed? And also, if you did, what caused you to consider that change? Because I think it's very simple and very easy to go, right, well, this works, so I'm going to do this.
Well, I believe that I'm a person that lives in the growth zone. I don't live in the fear zone. I did that when I was a lot younger and didn't really serve me well. So I try and work in the growth zone, and which means that I'm constantly trying to chop and change things so that I enjoy what I do. For me, I want to enjoy my job. I want to enjoy my marketing. I want to enjoy every aspect. I want to look at my marketing that I put out there and think, oh, that's nice. I want to see that people enjoy it. So, for me, during the pandemic, obviously everything went online, which was a challenge for me because I never really used to do a lot of live videos and things like that. But I said, well, you got to do it. And I did it. And now it's become more normal to me. Now I don't even look at myself when I'm like, now I'm looking at you. In the beginning, you were very like focused on how do I look? Is my hair right? Do I look fat? And, but that doesn't really matter anymore. Now it's more about, am I delivering this message so that it can be of value to somebody? And, yes, because networking has become such a popular way to meet people, I've had to reevaluate my networking recently and decide, is this really of value to me? Is the time that I'm spending on this networking really giving me back what I feel I deserve as a person? Because I value my time too. You should value your time the most, because your time needs to be divided between a balance once again. So if I've just felt like, look, I'm putting too much into this and it's not really happening for me. So I decided to have to close my connection with one of the networking groups, which is a great group. I'm not going to say who it is, but, and rather spend that time on creating better content for you, the people out there that I'm serving, because I'm not serving myself. I'm serving my people out there in the world that I desperately want them to have better relationships. And yeah, I try and get myself out there on podcasts, doing a lot of live work where people can see the real me.
And I think it kind of alludes back to that conversation we were having about like leadership, mask, etc., 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 about actually being very honest with yourself. I mean, many friends of mine, many business owners, and what it sounds like yourself as well, in the span of 6 months have kind of really analysed and really said, okay, so I'm investing this money, this time, this energy, these resources as a whole in these things, right? And especially for me specifically and what we do, it makes more and more and more sense for me to create more content, because that is the perfect example of exactly what we're going to do for clients and how it's valuable for clients. But also, I think that and this is what I said in a conversation I had in a network ages ago. I was in my old office, blah, 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 and it was talking about why marketing budgets are the soft budgets. The reason why they're perceived as a soft budget is not because they're actually a soft budget. Because if your marketing spend, you absolutely categorically knew it was going to get you leads, work, and etc., you wouldn't cut it. You wouldn't, because it is the bloodline of your business, right? It's the reason why you're still in business. The reason why we question, or the reason why we asterisk it by saying, oh, it's a soft budget, is because we don't believe and we don't necessarily fully appreciate the impact we can have with that marketing spend. Time investment, marketing spend, etc. The way that I look at it and the way that I've considered it for a long time is, how can I leverage everything I have access to? The 24 hours I have in a day, obviously minus the sleeping time, right? The money in my bank account, the network I have access to, and then technology. How can we leverage all of those things to increase the speed in which I can talk to, articulate my messages or my vision or my value or what I'm trying to do to more people, right? Now, there's some caveats, there's some hurdles, there's some issues that come with that, because as you grow, you're going to do things that you haven't done before, which means you're not going to get it right 100% of the time. But that's okay. Yeah. That's part of it, right? And I think as a key takeaway, and something that for the audience to think about or consider, is if you are in a comfortable situation for an extended period of time, are you actually still growing? Are you actually still, because for me personally, and I'll kind of ask you the same in a second, but for me personally, me making this kind of shift from traditional networking groups, and I still have a few, but there's specific reasons about why they're there, as the bulk of my conversation-based pieces and my, lead gen marketing, so to speak, was quite a scary step. Because yes, in theory, I know how to do paid ads. Yes, in theory, I'm very good at doing content. Yes, in theory, it gets me work. But also, I haven't fully had to rely on that fact before, because I've had these other aspects and these other things I can lean into that give more dopamine by proxy. Because it's like, yes, I had 5 calls today, so I'm moving forward, right? Sometimes, personally, I found when you do content, it can feel sometimes, whether it is or isn't is up to suggestion, but it can feel like you're shouting into a void sometimes, no matter how valuable your content is. I mean, let me ask you, how was that shift? How is that shift with you? Because I think it's a very interesting point that not many necessarily discuss as they shift into a more content-driven marketing model, more than the traditional, let's go to a marketing let's go to a networking meeting and let's talk to a load of people.
Well, I think I wouldn't recommend that you completely isolate yourself in front of your laptop creating content. I still believe we are human beings. We need to socialize. We need to connect with other human beings, specifically in person. So, I think I often get pleasantly surprised when I'm creating lots of valuable content out there, and out of the blue, I'll get a text, or I'll bump into somebody and they'll say, oh, I saw that video. And you know what? I got a video the other day, a message from someone the other day. I did a talk on your first time, which was a sexual intimacy talk. And I was talking about your first time and how it impacts your sexual relationships and other relationships as you move on in life. And out of the blue, I get this message from this person that I haven't seen for probably 7 years, saying, I listened to that, and for the first time, I understand why my relationship with my first husband didn't work out. So people won't necessarily, I think you need to let go of the idea that every time somebody likes your content, they actually have to click the like button. A lot of people are not clicking like. A lot of people are not clicking the heart. A lot of people are not sending that, wow, that was great message. And you don't need that for a dopamine kick. You need to trust your content to be valuable and know that whether it's somewhere in the UK or someone in Canada or somebody sitting on their bed in a room somewhere at uni in the dark that can't sleep is watching your content, and it's making I just, this is just me. I trust the universe. And if I'm doing my part and putting that energy out there, I'm sending this ripple effect of goodness out there, and eventually it will come back to me. And this is where the resilience part of having your own business is so important, is to keep your focus on what actually matters. And when times are tough, and my business mentor said to me, and which has stuck with me for years, is when your times are tough and it's not going great, is swing that energy that you're feeling of stress, of worry, of oh shit, what's going on? I need clients, and turn it into energy of creating good content. And that's when I actually produce my best stuff, because I know that someone out there needs to hear it. And, you know, going to a networking, reading your one-to-one is not going to bring you clients. It's about building the relationship after that. And you can do that without going to 10 networking meetings a week. You know, you can do that by connecting with people and showing up authentically. I mean, that's what people really crave nowadays in this online digital world.
And I think it's important to mention as well, it depends on the kind of content you produce, right? Because let's say you produce a lot of the content around relationships and arguably very, very vulnerable stuff. It's very unlikely someone's going to comment and going, yes, yes, that connects with me because I was fucked up that badly as well, right? That's just not a thing that someone's
Yeah.
going to do, especially on LinkedIn. To be honest, it's not, right? Or it takes a certain level of
No.
gusto and a certain level of healing to actually get to that point where you can talk about that openly. And also, is that authentic to you? To me, as someone who wears their feelings on their sleeve, so to speak, yes, absolutely, that is. Okay, cool, that's
Mm.
me. That's not going to resonate with everyone. Some people think I overshare, etc. Okay, that's cool, all good, right? But for me,
Mm.
it's about, I think, creating that level of legacy, creating that level of ripple effect to say, okay, because I remember having a conversation, for obvious reasons I won't mention their name, but with a very close friend of mine 6 months ago, and she told me, Colton, you do realise that people look up to you. And this was the first moment where I had this oh shit moment in my head, because I went, shit, she's right? And I hadn't really considered it before. Because I just was sort of in my
Mm.
own bubble, doing my thing, like, yeah, let's do this content thing, let's do this video production thing, let's do this video marketing thing, etc. But then I suddenly realised, hold on a second, to young men, it's very, very possible that because of my adversity, because of who I am, because of what I've achieved, right, people could look up to me. And then I went, far, okay, right.
Well, that's a
Yeah, because that's
responsibility,
where my
isn't it?
brain went suddenly. It was like, right, okay, hold on. So that's a real. Okay, right. So what are we going to do with this responsibility now? Because with the great power comes great responsibility. Blah 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 blah. And the point I've made is, and the point I made at the end of the year was, okay, I have this platform. I'm graced to have this audience. I'm graced to have people listen to me, which I'm eternally grateful for. But now it's up to me to choose how I can use that, choose how I use that voice, choose how I use that platform. And something which I've been trying to do more and more this year is be more openly vulnerable about the bullshit I've had to deal with, right? And say, no, this is not cool. No, that's not okay. But you can still get through it.
Mm.
And life is going to beat you to your knees, but you have the ability to get up again.
Exactly. And the thing is, Carlton, this is where that intimate connection of a real relationship starts happening.
Mm,
You know, people don't want someone. Look, I know there's a lot of rah-rah people out there that everything goes great in their life, everything's
mm,
successful. But I mean, the people that I look up to, like the Jay Shettys and the people that tell their real life story of, you know, having hardship, and that's what people identify with. So, you know, I don't hide the fact that I had an awful first marriage and lived a life for many, many years just to create this persona out there. Like you say, maybe this is why I have this um, innate responsibility now to tell people to take your bloody
mm.
mask off and be your true self, because you're living a lie and that's why you can't cope. You know, So, it's about using your past experiences and being true to yourself, sharing that with people out there, because the chances are the people that you connect with are the people that are on the journey that
Mm,
you've been on, and they are going to look up to you because you give them hope. You aspire them to overcome those
yeah.
difficulties, whether it's starting a new business on your own or um, whatever the issue is that they connect with. There's so many aspects of what they can
Yeah, and
connect with.
I mean, this is kind of leading back to an extent about the stoicism part of men. This is where I kind of disagree with it within reason, and this is always why I asterisk it when I talk about it by saying, yes, stoicism is important, and yes, you should have the ability as a man to be stoic. Yes, you should, right? You absolutely should. You should have high levels of discipline. You should have the ability to do things when you don't feel like it, etc. Yes, you should have that ability. However, for me personally and my belief and my understanding of the world, if you can't be vulnerable and you can't also show that other side, your more feminine side, that's also a disadvantage, and that's also something which you should be able to do with the right people, right? The issue which people can sometimes run into is they open up to the wrong people, they bring their guard down to the wrong people, and then they get hurt, myself included, right? Now, that happens once, shame on that person. Happens twice, shame on you, right? Now, the asterisk is I'll put this is people can change if they choose to, right? But it's not your job to change them, right? It's and a quote which I'll use here is don't try and fix broken birds, because if you succeed, all they're going to do is fly away, right? Now, the crux
Mm,
there is it's not your job to fix someone else's trauma, right? It's your job to fix your own trauma and understand why do you pick people potentially who you need to fix to gain that sense of accomplishment, to gain that sense of help, to gain that sense of belief. That's not the same as being able to
mm,
point someone in a direction and give them some helpful advice. They're different,
mm,
right? One is I need
mm,
to fix the person, as we alluded to earlier, because I need to be whole and it helps me become whole and help become me. No, actually, in a healthy environment, and feel free to lean on this, but from my understanding, a healthy actual relationship is you can completely be your independent self, and then you choose to invite that person as a complement to what you're already doing, and they are an additional benefit to your life. Fantastic. But actually, you are completely
mm,
capable and completely okay with the fact that in a world where that becomes a negative, that comes a pull down, that comes a weight, you can mutually agree, is this something we want to continue? Perhaps not. And this is in any context, right? I'm sure a lot of the audience is considering
mm,
this in a personal context. The same could be true in business. The same could be true in a boss. The same could be true in a business network. The same could be true in any reality, right? It's about appreciating and understanding who, and then it kind of goes back to this question of who do you invite into your life for what seasons and for what realities and why, and or what boundaries do you set with them? Because I think everyone should have
mm.
boundaries because it's how you have healthy relationships.
Exactly. You know, I think any relationship is an add-on to you as a person. If you look at the analogy of um, visualize, for instance, waves and the seaweed under the waves. Have you ever seen those videos where the waves make the seaweed do this dance? And they come in their own form at the top and they're doing their own dance at the top. And this is what a relationship is like. It's about one of you is the seaweed and one of you are the waves. And the one can't dance without the other. And, if you are thinking that, right, I'm resisting this person, whether it's I'm trying to pretend I'm not a piece of seaweed and I'm going to pretend that I'm stoic, it's not going to work because you will have to bend at some point. And, maybe it's just because I have three daughters, I'm very anti um, labeling either men or women as a certain thing. I believe it's far healthier to believe that we are all human beings. We all have the same needs of wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, and wanting to be seen and heard, and wanting to feel this sense of belonging. Whether it's at home as a dad, or a mum, or at work as the boss or the admin person or the marketing manager. We all have the same needs. And when you take the fakeness away of, I have to be stoic, or I have to show up as this hard-assed manager or the boss man, that's when your real self, just get rid of all that persona and rather try and focus on showing up as who you really are. Because the stress that you create for yourself, I was telling you earlier, when you can't show up as your true self, is eventually going to break you. And this is why people on the top end of the scale have burnouts and have all these stressful illnesses that are related to stress, because they are not being their true selves. They're not saying, hang on, look, I'm having a hard day myself, or I feel for you. How can we make this company more overall caring environment of authenticity, you know?
No, I completely agree. And I think, as I say, like, leaning a little bit into that as well, if there's elements of you that, I wouldn't go as far as saying enjoys, but there's elements of you that, like for me, example, there's elements where I know I need to get my teeth in, and part of me being authentic to me is being stoic, is being disciplined, is being, right, this is what needs to be done, let's push as hard as we can. That isn't necessarily wrong, because that is me being my authentic self. But that's the key point. It's not doing it for the sake of doing it to give over a persona. It's understanding that sometimes you are going to have to be that way, and is that part of who you authentically can be as part of the overarching person who you are. And this is the caveat I always say, it's around the context in which you're being stoic. And I truly believe that for most men, they should have specifically men, they should, and or if it's authentic to themselves, have that stoic side, have that high discipline side, have that drive side, because it's biologically wired for us to conquer and provide, but also have that side where they can be vulnerable, they can show their feelings, they can show their emotions. And I think sometimes there is a level of difficulty that can come with that, because it comes from a level of judgment from others, right? Because we are less of a man. How dare us have a feeling that isn't, grrr, right? Or something along those lines, right? It comes with that reality of you are less manly, because how dare you feel things, right?
Yeah. Well, you can argue that, or counter argue that and say that there's the same pressure on a lot of women that are have been taught that they should be soft and gentle, and that's how they should show up. I say bull dust. Bull dust to all those labels and all that thing. Just be yourself. If you want to be a sensitive man, then be that. If you want to be sensitive today and hardcore tomorrow, then that's fine. Don't try and be something that makes you feel like you are turning the volume down on something else of yourself, whether you're a man or a woman. I mean, I know so many women that are hardcore business owners, and you might call them stoic. That they walk into the office, they are rigid, they are hardcore, they don't dare show emotion because they're scared they're going to be seen as weak. So it goes both ways in the corporate world. It's all about the pressure of who or do you think you're supposed to show up as, and should you be allowing yourself to agree that that's actually a thing, or should you try and be more yourself? And is that going to make you happier at work?
Well, I would say actually in your life, and being present in every moment that you're in, whether that's personal, professional, or a mix of the two, right? Etc. And this is why I always asterisk it by saying on the context around who you are, who you're with, etc. And this is why the context matters, right? As I said, it's not about being stoic at all times for the sake of being stoic, whether you're a man or a woman. It's about understanding the context in which you're stoic, under the context in which you're vulnerable, and in the context in which you're authentic self. For those who've really enjoyed this conversation, because I'm conscious of time, where's best to reach out? Where's best to have that conversation? Where's best to continue this conversation outside of this piece of cake?
Oh, thanks, Carlton. Well, I'm on most social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So you can find me there. My name is obviously Tracy Kimberg. Carlton will probably put the description in below, and you can, in that or wherever it's going to appear, you can find me there. And please connect. And I'd love to hear what your opinion is on how to have a real, authentic, and healthy relationship, whether it's with yourself at home, with your family, friends, or at work. And how are you finding that? Is it difficult for you? Is it easy for you? And what have you learned through the years, through your own growth as a human?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this great conversation. Final piece of advice for those who have got this far in the interview and are ready to go and make more meaningful connections in their life. What would you suggest they do?
I would suggest that you let go of all the expectations that you have of yourself and of others. I'm not a very strong believer of expectations. I think you need to trust your intuition and show up as your authentic self, whether it's looking in the mirror or the moment you leave the door every day, or whether you sit in front of your laptop like Carlton and I so often, engaging with people online. Just be yourself. And that's where the connections start happening, the true connections.
Thank you so much for coming back and joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from mine and Tracy's interview. I'll be back next week with a brand new interview to help you move forward in your relationships, in your business, in your life and your mindset. Let's get you growing. Let's get you continuing to be profitable and happy and more fulfilled in what you do through the work we're doing, through the work you're doing. And I'll see you very, very soon.